Hi everyone. Really quick before we start today, I'd just like to say thank you to 10.9 LLC, a shooting supply company who has agreed to try out a part-time sponsorship for the show. As part of this, they're offering a special deal on their website exclusively for the listeners of Ryan's Shooting Podcast, which will be available until December 15th. The deal is 25% off all gloves that they sell on their website for use as many times as you want. So if you've been thinking of getting a new soft glove for standing, or a hard glove for prone, or maybe a trigger hand glove to prevent your hand from slipping down the grip when it gets sweaty, go to 10.9.com, that's 10pt9.com, and enter the coupon code podcast25 with no spaces to receive your 25% off upon checkout. Also, be sure to check out next week's episode to see if there are any new offers, and thanks and enjoy the show. So, ask yourself this question. What is one thing that almost every shooter struggles with, but is at the same time one of the easiest things to correct and will show an immediate improvement in your score? The answer? Coming up right after the intro music. So first of all, it's good to be back. I know it's been a few weeks since I last posted, but I've been working on a few different projects and was out of town for a bit, and I'm also working on preparation for future episodes of this show. In regards to that last part specifically, I have specific plans for 21 upcoming shows that will be coming out over the course of the next 6 months or so, and as long as everybody continues to find them useful, like they seem to have been doing, then I plan to keep putting them out. Anyway, so back to today's topic and my attempt at a cliffhanger entrance. The question of what is one thing that almost every shooter struggles with, but is at the same time one of the easiest things to correct and will show an immediate improvement in your score? Well, you may have come up with some suggestions apart from what I'm going to talk about today. And by the way, if you did, then feel free to send me an email message about it to olympicshootingpodcast@gmail.com, and maybe I'll do a show about that sometime too. But my answer is shot rejection. How many of us have overheld on a shot, recognized it, and then pulled the trigger anyway? And then after you went through that process, were you not surprised at all to see that it wasn't the deep 10 you really wanted? And is every person listening to this raising their hand? Because if you aren't, then you're lying to yourself. How about this scenario? Have you ever had a really good hold on a target and then realized you hadn't really been paying attention at all the whole time, and then fired the shot after that realization anyway? Same follow-up question. Were you surprised at the outcome? Okay, how about this last one? Have you ever come down on the target and then watched your sights drift underneath the 10 ring, recognized it, then muscled the gun back up, fired the shot, and then looked through the scope or monitor to see that once again, it wasn't a 10? I could really go on all day with these examples, as we can all think of scenarios where we should have rejected a shot but then didn't for one reason or another. I think that the biggest part of this is related to our internal, what I like to call, Angry Birds instinct. What made Angry Birds such a popular app? Well, people get addicted to doing a simple action and then watching the result, hoping that they'll do just a little bit better this time, and then feel that satisfaction of watching the little buildings with the pigs on them get knocked over, or whatever it is you actually do in that game. I don't really know, I never actually played it. But imagine this next sentence being in capital letters. Do not make Olympic-style precision shooting into a game of Angry Birds like you would play on the subway or on the school bus going home. This is a much more complicated task, and you are an elite athlete. Yes, we all instinctually just want to put the shot downrange, shot after shot after shot, quickly looking down at the monitor to see what the result is. Get our instant gratification and move on. Oh, and chances are that you forgot to follow through while you're doing this as well, but that's a different topic for a different day. So, what makes shot rejection such a powerful skill? Well, partially it's the fact that so many people don't reject their shots, so if you do, you're grabbing up those points that your competitors are lazily letting go by the wayside. But just from an individual perspective, shot rejection is probably the easiest way to improve your score, Because even if you aren't the greatest shooter and a quarter of the time your hold is just atrocious, then you can reject those shots and end up shooting much better scores. So, how do we make this very simple concept into something that is entirely natural in our shooting process? First, if you are a person who does not reject shots because whenever you do, you tell yourself that you weren't good enough to take that shot and overall you end up taking the whole thing as a negative, then you're going to have to change your mental approach to it. Most people are familiar with the idea that if you want to be like a certain type of person, then embody that person. If you want to be as good as whoever this great shooter is of your choice, or even better, as the most ideal shooter you can conjure up in your head, start acting and behaving and thinking exactly like that person. Good shooters reject shots. This is a fundamental principle, and if you ask me, it's one of a few things that sets apart great shooters from not so great shooters. You need to look at an instance of shot rejection as an instance that you just improved your score because you didn't give away the points that you would have just lost. So make sure that you get that positive mindset about it, and then be consistent and disciplined on rejecting those shots that aren't quite right. Don't be an Angry Birds junkie when it comes to your shooting. Just wanted to take a quick break here to once again remind you all of the opportunity being offered by 10.9, which is 25% off all gloves on their website if you use the Ryan's Shooting Podcast exclusive coupon code PODCAST25. Please go out and make use of this great discount, because otherwise 10.9 won't know if this sponsorship is going to be worth doing, and having the show sponsored is a great way for me to be able to keep making episodes available as a free resource to help you all improve, which is really what the show is all about. Thanks again, and enjoy the rest of the show. Now, some of you may be wondering, okay, well, under exactly what circumstances should I reject my shots? Well, I would say, that's an excellent question, thanks for asking. If you ask me, which you hypothetically just did, then my answer would be this. I personally reject shots for these reasons: overholding, recognition of the absence of good concentration halfway through my shot process, irregular hold movement, poor balance, a sudden distracting noise behind me that I did not anticipate, if my sights come straight down the numbers on the target but then dip slightly below the 10 ring, or if a range officer comes up halfway through my shot process to look at my position to make sure I'm legal, or to look at my next door competitor to check them. Those range officers can be a distraction, so don't let them negatively impact your performance just because they're doing their jobs. Now, these are all the reasons that I most commonly reject shots for, but you may have your own triggers that differ from mine, which is, fine. Everyone's different and everyone has a slightly different shooting process, but I hope this gives you an idea for what I think most experienced people would probably consider to be good and common reasons for shot rejection. Alright, so now what should you do physically during a shot rejection? Well, you can do whatever you want, but here's what I do, at least for the standing position where my shots are rejected more often than anything else. If I'm shooting small bore, I typically load from the shoulder anyway, so during a shot rejection, I just pick my head up off the cheek piece, get my balance again and refocus, and then put my head back down on the cheek piece and take my next hold. An air rifle, I normally have to put my gun down on my stand in between each shot to load since the breech is farther forward than on my small bore, and I can't reach it while keeping the gun mounted. But in terms of rejecting a shot, most of the time I still keep it in my shoulder and just do a second hold right from there, just like I would do in small bore. The exception for both is if the shot was rejected because I felt my NPA was off and needs to be adjusted, or because every once in a while it can just be good to do a full reset, such as maybe instances where the position is incorrect or has settled significantly, or maybe to help reset my mind by resetting my entire position physically. The moral here is find what works for you and what feels like it maintains consistency the best, and stick with it. Be disciplined. Alright, so now let's say you've become a master at shot rejection. You reject shots regularly and hardly ever let little things that could mess up your shot make it through the cracks. But now we may run into a new problem. Hooray. So what happens if you reject too much? Is that possible? Does it matter? The answer to those three questions is indeed yes. Sometimes you can be overly critical and reject 2 or 3 times for every shot because you're looking so hard for that perfect sight picture, and you tell yourself that you just won't accept anything that doesn't look like a 10.9. Well, that's a good attitude, but I hate to break it to you, nobody has a 10.9 hold, especially not in standing, which is probably the position most of us are focusing on most of the time. So get used to what your hold is, and obviously try to improve it over time, but recognize that it's going to be moving a little bit, and get comfortable with taking good shots despite that little movement. Strive for those deep 10s, but reject with moderation. Something of note here is that under the stress of competition, you very well may become overly critical of your position, hold, shot process, everything you can think of. In fact, your body could be just like it always is in practice, your hold could be just as good as it always is in practice, and your focus might even be better than normal, but under that increased stress of competition, you may feel like everything is much worse than normal, and so, what do you know? You start rejecting a lot more shots than normal. Realize that under match conditions, chances are that your position and hold are pretty much just as good as normal, but your body's stress response is to pay greater attention to what's going on, almost like it's looking for problems. The key to overcoming this is recognizing that your brain will probably do it, and then learn how to shoot through it anyway. To do this, you have to force yourself to train under stressful situations, stressful conditions, so that you get more used to it. If you feel like you're rejecting too much during a match, you may just have to decide to become more aggressive rather than defensive and accept the fact that your body knows how to perform the skill of shooting, and then let it do its job. Still reject the shots that need rejecting, but it's almost as if you might have to become a little less picky than you normally would. Again, results may vary and everyone is a little different. This is just a general trend that I think most of you will probably find. So finally, what is exactly the problem with rejecting a lot of shots anyway? Why would that be bad? Well, the first thing is that the match is, of course, timed. Each time you reject a shot is going to be somewhere between 30 and 50 seconds off the clock, and if you reject 2 or 3 times for every shot, those seconds are going to add up, and you're going to be very pressed for time at the end of the match, which is definitely not going to help you perform better. That's just going to be an extra stressor that you really don't need. Secondly, each time you reject a shot increases the amount of movement and energy you use both mentally and physically. You might say, oh, come on, it's not that tiring to pick up a gun an extra time and pull the trigger once more. But think about it. In a 60-shot match, let's say you reject once every other shot. All of a sudden, you just took yourself from 60 repetitions of essentially doing a bicep curl, of lifting this heavy rifle off the stand and mounting it, then focusing all of your thoughts and energy into trying to create a perfect sight picture and hold and coordinate all of your body movements to make the perfect shot, all the way up to 90 times. Not including, any holding you might have done before the match started and everything you did during your 15-minute sighting period. That's a lot of extra energy you just used, and rejecting once every other shot really isn't overly excessive to begin with. So, yes, rejecting too much can be a problem, both in terms of tactics and strategy for your match and physical and mental stamina. Shooting isn't physically draining like maybe being a triathlete or a swimmer or something like that, but doing these things over and over again excessively is going to lower your ability to maintain the degree of fine motor control and mental alertness that is necessary to shoot well throughout, the entirety of your competition, and not just at the beginning. So this about does it for today. If you only take one thing away from today's show, let it be this. Don't be an Angry Bird junkie when it comes to your shooting. You're better than that. And if you aren't, then get working on making that change. Once again, I just want to thank 10.9 for agreeing to try out sponsoring the show and offering a great deal on equipment for the listeners. Remember, the coupon code is podcast25, and it will get you a 25% off. All gloves offered on the 10.9 website, which is 10pt9.com, expiring on December 15th. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great week.